Welcome back. Episode 3 already.
I know.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So, put it in perspective. Today is a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Branson's going to have a baby tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow or possibly Saturday.
Yes. It depends on how long, of course, labor takes and all that stuff. But we are going into the hospital tomorrow. Yes.
You're going to have a baby. You're going to be a dad.
Yeah.
Little boy, little girl, whatever. Yeah. You guys are being surprised.
Yeah. Surprise.
But that's really good. Do you have like a girl and a boy name picked out?
We do. Okay.
On the docket, we're kind of going to be loose with the docket. I think like we have an idea, but I think the beauty of this and our minds, the way that they work, we basically live life through memes and everything that you should learn and retain information wise, I think kind of goes in ear and one out the other for both of us. And we just remember everything through like comedy, parody,
stupid stuff,
and like memes. Like we can tell you about memes from years ago, but like you ask us like 3rd grade level math questions and there's a good chance we don't know it.
Yeah, not happening.
But that being said, let the squirrel in us, let that dog in me, let that squirrel ADHD stuff just run wild. But basically today is, we already talked about kind of like how we grew up fishing in certain areas, but now let's get into the nitty gritty of like what we actually did when we were kids fishing.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff. You go first because you lived in like the mecca of teenage, but like preteen, also like pond hopping, because like you're limited on saltwater fishing without a boat and without the understanding of like going wading in certain areas. But like bass fishing is way easier because there's hundreds of thousands of ponds in this area, and you lived in like the middle of all of them.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because this is like when we talked about like the theme and the idea about this podcast, like I saw it immediately as like a stroll down memory lane, like how we became the fishermen we are. And I would say for the most part, talking to probably 90% of the fishermen that come in here that grew up in this area, they all kind of started out how we started out, which was pond hopping, which was doing the style of fishing that was convenient to them, that they could do after work or after school, on the weekends, things like that, where they didn't need a car, they didn't need a boat, they could take their bike or walk and just be really, really successful when it came to fishing. So I grew up in East Lake, a little more specifically in Woodfield, which is right next to East Lake High School and Brooker Creek.
Across from Wentworth Golf Course, that development right across from Wentworth Golf Course.
That area is really, really well known to most people that are around here for really good bass fishing. Yeah. Because there's golf courses, there's neighborhoods, there's reserves that back up to all of that.
So you say the area, you mean like the East Lake?
Yes, the East Lake area. Yeah.
Like kind of still on the south side of Tarpon Ave.
Yes. Yeah.
But like Landsbrook, East Lake Woodlands.
Exactly.
Woodfield, and kind of all those little areas sprinkled in between.
Yeah. And you could get to all of those places by bike, by foot.
Yeah.
So growing up in that area, and I started really getting into fishing. Of course, I did it in middle school and a little bit younger, but I never really took it seriously and wanted to do it all the time until we were like early in high school, probably like 9th grade, 8th grade, somewhere around there is when we started like getting into it a lot. And literally every single day after school, I fished. I fished the ponds in my neighborhood every single day. And it got to the point where we could pretty much call shots when it came to fishing.
You definitely could.
Yeah. Like we could literally say like, hey, I'm going to stand here, I'm going to cast there, and I'm going to catch this fish, and then I'm going to catch this fish and this fish. And we did it all the time.
Like those ponds though, like this kind of is another point, but like, you guys had a pond in your backyard growing up, like at your parents' house?
Yep.
Do you think if you didn't live on that pond that you would have fished every single day? Do you think you still would have walked around? Or do you think just the pure convenience of like where their house is, it sits on a pond, you know all your neighbors, so you could walk around the entire thing. Like nobody cared that you were in their backyard.
Yeah.
Whereas today, or if you could pull up to a place where you don't live, like people don't know you, but like people knew you and your brother growing up as like they're going to be walking around the yard and fishing. Like there was so many tiny ponds so you could call your shots because none of these things were big. Like they were all 2 acres at the most, 3 acre, like little bodies of water and like retention ponds. So like, do you think if you didn't like live with a pond in your backyard, you would have fished it that much?
I would say Yes, maybe, but the convenience of literally being able to walk out the back door and fish, like
Always starting in the same place.
starting in the same spot,
Yeah.
and I mean, you knew the
Yeah.
layout, what we
Yeah.
would walk.
We fished it thousands of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say I probably would have, but it would, of course, I would have walked further and not been able to do it so quickly. I mean, the thing about bass fishing in Florida is I mean, hot take, it's easy. It is easy. You can literally catch almost every single bass in the state of Florida on a green pumpkin or watermelon red
Yeah.
worm.
Well, okay. So pushback. Pond fishing is easy.
Yes.
Lake Tarpon is freaking hard.
It is very hard.
Lake Tarpon is hard
Yeah.
to fish.
But is that because there's so much pressure on those fish?
The thing about bass fishing though is like, I'm by no means a professional. I am also by no means passionate about bass fishing.
No.
Like
we did it because it was convenient.
There are guys that bass fish that don't really saltwater fish, or to the point that I feel the way I do about saltwater fishing versus bass fishing that are the complete opposite. And we know plenty of people that are like that.
Yeah.
So freshwater and saltwater guys are completely different for the most part. So I think that's like the statement would be more along the lines of the pond fishing.
Yes, for sure.
Is pretty easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty easy.
And like you didn't need, like growing up and being younger, we of course didn't have enough money to buy a whole bunch of stuff, buy the nice rods and reels like we can today, or even we're saltwater guys are the guys that take it seriously. But I mean, I remember that I think I had one rod, and it was a Shimano Scimitar or whatever it was. Scimitar, yeah, that one. And I had a older Sahara, and I mean, that's all I needed. And I would literally after school, if it wasn't a school day, I would fish pretty much from like the time I woke up until the mid to late afternoon if I didn't have anything going on. But at school, what I would do is I would come home, I'd eat lunch, and then I would fish until dark and just walk the areas and, have a pack of trick worms in my pocket.
I remember.
And just crush fish and just figure out where those fish were, those beds that they sat, where those tubes where you couldn't see them.
The culverts that
the culverts and everything where they were at. And it was really interesting. And I think that helped us a lot in where we're at today, because like we took our time and learned an area and learned how to fish, certain seasons and certain fish. But I mean, I remember, on the weekends, just fishing so much in that neighborhood and so much in Landsbrook and stuff like that, and just going hard and learning how to, and I guess, and again, like I said, bass fishing is very easy, but I think learning how to catch those fish in all the seasons is really important. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And we had a lot of crazy things happen to us when we were doing it too. So
yeah. We're going to get into the crazy stuff in just a minute, but my story's pretty much like yours, aside from where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
Like my parents lived in countryside, didn't fish in countryside, but all my friends lived up where you lived, either Landsbrook, you were in Woodfield, other people lived in Woodfield that we knew. So all of my time outside of school that wasn't committed to extracurricular like sports and family, church, things like that, by the time I could drive, or the time, like my older brother was the same way. So like anytime I could hitch a ride, or when I started driving, but basically all my free time was spent up either at your house or like with like our other buddies that lived up there, either in Landsbrook or over by Tarpon Woods Golf Course. That's another one.
That's a banger.
It used to be a banger.
That's true.
I don't think it is anymore.
I don't think so.
But I haven't bass fished out there in years. But neither here nor there. We grew up fishing the same areas, and again, back then, 99% of our fishing was freshwater because that's what we had access to. Again, we didn't drive. We lived far enough from the ocean where we couldn't just go out, but also at the same time, like we knew everything we needed to know about the places that we were fishing. So load your pockets down with, like you like trick worms. Like, I like trick worms too, but my thing was like either a jig with some kind of creature trailer or just like a Texas rigged. What was
Pit Bosses?
The Pit Bosses. That's what I'm trying to think of.
So many of those.
So who made that?
Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Yeah, and they were super cheap.
So it was like that creature bait So they made scented and unscented, but there was a couple different colors. Like green pumpkin obviously works like well, but
did
then you
black and
remember?
blue.
Okay, so the waterfall pond. So this was a pond that was catty corner to the house you grew up in. But we would walk around and walk through, again, somebody that you guys knew over there, walk through their yard. So this was unique because we called it we had names for all these ponds too. So I don't think we named the pond in your parents' backyard, but all the other ones in the area we had nicknames for that we, so there was Kickout Pond, and we'll get into why we called it Kickout Pond, and there was Waterfall Pond, and were there any other ones that we really even spent much time in?
Not really, but those were the two main.
Those were the two main ones. So Waterfall Pond was super cool because it had that concrete walkway thing / culvert, whatever, at that one side of it. And then there was a cypress marsh on the other side. So in the summer, when we get rainstorms, the water would come up over that cypress marsh and
flow
over into the lake.
Yeah.
That water was disgustingly tannic, like in there. Not tannic like salty. I just mean like the same color as like black. That water was completely different than like the pond in your backyard. So we would always pretty much, it was a guarantee, like you said, like we knew the spots. Like there were certain culverts you could flip and pretty much guarantee a bite 9 times out of 10.
Yep.
That specific one, it's like cast a pit boss, or we use some top waters, but not like we do now. But like mainly it was the creature baits. And you could pretty much cast right along that concrete wall, and it dropped off pretty good there from the amount of water that would just go over there with time. And you could pretty much guarantee yourself a fish in that back corner of that pond. And again, this was what, a 2-acre, 3-acre pond at the most, and it had maybe a dozen houses on it. So, and it was only on one side, so you could pretty much walk the entire other side without having to worry about anything. But so I grew up doing the exact same kind of fishing, freshwater, that you did. Then fast forward to when I could drive / when my older brother could drive, because if he wasn't playing baseball, he was fishing and I was tagging along. Then we branched into Tarpon Woods. So that was a bit of a ways from your house. So it's like we weren't going to like ride bikes there or walk there. It was just a little too far. But Tarpon Woods had like four really good ponds. Well, Aaron used to live on the golf course. So once they lived there, when we were in high school, we could walk the entire golf course from there and fish that. But he wasn't super into fishing, so it wasn't like we usually used to do other stuff on the golf course out there at night, and not fishing, which that we'll also get into because we've seen some crazy stuff out there at night, some freaking crazy stuff.
Some weird stuff. Yeah.
So, but then we ventured into like over off Racetrack Road, the Triangle Pond. And it had like that big grass mat. There was like 2 areas that had big grass mats on it, and then there was a small section of open water. But Joey D got stuck back there, and the Nissan that one time. And so once I got the basics down of like Woodfield was my life of fishing, and then once I ventured out, I guess you could say I took a lot of those lessons of what I learned about bass fishing and like applied it. But then the bodies of water started getting a little bit bigger. And those areas of West Chase are like still, I guess, on the non-Hillsborough County side of West Chase, out there by I'm trying to think of like what's even out there that people would know. The Eagles Golf Course, I guess. Yeah. But it's still like on this side of it. But then I actually started learning the fundamentals of the bass. Yeah. And I learned how they bed, where they bed, and then we started catching giants.
Yeah, for sure.
So there was that one pond. This was a lake, I would say. It was out there. It's completely built around now. You can't get to it. But it was the same one where Dan did that video where he flipped over in the Lono.
Yes.
Remember that pond?
Oh, yes. Yeah. That
in like
is,
Countryway or whatever.
Yeah.
Not Countryway, but what is that called?
That I think it's like high landing or something like that. You can get to it. So remember how we would fish it was we would park along like the front side of it. You can't do that anymore. You have to go through the back, and there's a park back there now. And I fished there kind of recently, and it's still killer. I mean, giant fish in there.
But we could walk. You could walk like.
I thought I saw a hippo in there one time too. Freaks me out. I don't think it was a hippo. I think it was a gator. But I was on the paddleboard, and I'm like, "Oh frick!"
You were on the paddleboard in a lake? Freaking nuts, man.
Yeah.
I
thought it was a hippo. Yeah.
But we started like that's kind of when Alex started fly fishing too.
Yeah.
We're getting big into it. So then once he was in college and like would come back, I remember we fished that lake in the spring. That had a culvert that was pretty regular too, but the bass weren't like 2 or 3 pounds. Like a good one, remember in your neighborhood, like a good one was like 3, 4, maybe. Like that was a good fish in there. You would catch a lot of fish, but they were, for the most part, they were like the, 13, 14
We caught some
inches.
big ones in
There
there.
were some big fish in there, and God knows we caught them all, like definitely throughout those ponds over the 15 years we spent fishing it. But once I ventured out of that area into like some of these other places where I'm like, okay, well, I know there definitely wasn't any pressure on some of these places. Those fish got huge. And there was another one that it backs up to a preserve. I saw black bears out there actually.
I remember you telling me about that. Yeah,
You fished that pond though, but I spent 2 hours fishing this one bed, and there was 2 fish on it, a small male and a giant female, every bit of 10 pounds. This is my biggest bass.
Yeah,
it's on my Facebook somewhere, but Facebook, there you go. I spent 2 hours fishing this one fish, and there's like sketchy stuff going on. It was like a Saturday afternoon. Like the businesses that were back in this like industrial park are closed, but there's like homeless people. Like
the one behind Lowe's, right?
No,
no. Oh,
that's a
the
different one.
That's
the sunken road in it. You can't get back to that anymore.
Yeah.
This is the one. There's like the Dunkin' Donuts on Racetrack Road. It's like back in there in that industrial.
I remember that one. Yeah.
There was like homeless people like shooting up back there and like freaking out at each other, and they were like 30 feet from me, and I was just like flipping like a jig in there, like, and I wanted to catch this fish. I was obsessed with it, and I wore fishaflage back then. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the fishaflage shirts. But I freaking caught a giant in there, and that's my biggest bass still. Probably won't ever break it because bass fishing now is a waste of time to me. But neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, it was. I say that in good spirit to say like, when I think back about like my fishing journey and like growing up, those are the best days of my life. Like I love sports. Like I love playing baseball. I love playing golf, like all of that stuff growing up. I love my friends at school, but like I didn't hang out with my friends. Like I went to Dunedin, you went to Eastlake. I didn't hang out with people from Dunedin except for one outside of school. Like all my friends went to Eastlake.
Yeah.
And those were my favorite days of like spending nights doing dumb stuff out at Burger Creek Preserve. And you did it way more than me, but fishing, getting kicked out, like Bob Dre screaming at us, in his crazy foreign language, whatever that guy was, God rest his soul. And like getting kicked out of spots, getting speeding tickets, like those were the best, like those were the fun days when I look back. Like I don't think about my friends in high school. I think about my friends that went to the other high schools that I hung out with and spent the night at their house and all that stuff. We had fun staying up all night and beating frogs with freaking golf clubs, walking around. How we didn't get like arrested for doing some of this stuff. Like we would dress in all black on purpose, carry around golf clubs and just beat frogs.
Yeah, beat the toads. Yeah, not frogs.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
frogs are nice. Yeah,
cane toads or whatever. Not cane.
We were
toads,
doing a duty for the dogs so they didn't die.
But like, how did we never get the cops called on us by people like, there's 2 men walking around in all black clothes carrying golf clubs, hitting things.
I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you that those were probably the best times because we didn't have any responsibilities. And like literally it was just like the time in our lives where we could fish for 12 hours. And we didn't have a care in the world. Like no favorite
responsibilities.
Yeah, my favorite times for us was when it was the summer, super hot, and we would just wake up and I don't wear shoes at all, so like I would just be barefoot all day, walking around Landsbrook, catching these bass, over and over and over again, just going on adventures and trying to find these new places that no one fished, walking through a wooded section to that. Remember that lily pad pond in the neighborhood?
Yeah. And you could walk back into like that. There's it's like partly private land and there's cattle on it and it's partly the preserve.
Yep. But like going back there and like finding these places and just not having to worry about like what time you had to come back and then fishing at night. And then remember when I bought that giant swim bait lure and we were fishing Kickout Pond and it was at night, it was super, super late and I hooked that giant. I mean, that fish, we saw it jump because I think it was a full moon. We could probably see it. I mean, we've caught some fish in those ponds that were double digits.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Kickout Pond had big fish in
Yeah,
it.
it did, because I think it was super deep. Because remember how it like ran? There was like that. It would go. It would essentially like go straight along the road and then go to the back.
Yeah.
I think that the more I fished it, the more I realized that straightaway on the road, it was like a ditch almost, and like those fish would just sit there.
Yeah.
But that fish that I hooked, I mean, it had to have been 15 pounds. I mean, it was huge, because that swim bait that I was throwing was like 8 inches.
It was bigger than 8. Dude, that thing was...
It was a giant.
That thing was 12 inches long.
Yeah. It probably was. It was
We were freaking out because that was like a $20 lure back then.
Yeah.
That was back then. Like, we have spool techs that cost more than that. And here, and definitely like lures. We don't like carry many glide baits, but like we have lures that cost way more than that now.
Sure.
And I just remember back in the day, that's crazy. Some of those swim baits and like glide baits that those guys use in California and like Arizona, they're like a couple $100.
Yeah, that's wild.
Which is crazy to me. And those guys fish 12 hours and they get one bite. But the one bite they get is a
giant.
It's a 15, 16, 17 pound fish.
Yeah.
So easily everything's like over 10 pounds that those guys catch. But I don't know how you can do that for that long. And
I don't know. I would say
it's like deer hunting in a way.
It's similar to us throwing top waters, but we are pretty productive when it comes to top waters, you know?
Kind of for the most part.
Yeah.
We need to talk about some of the crazy stuff that we saw and stuff that happened to us.
Yeah.
I mean, I equate it to being a police officer, like not in the way of like danger and duty, but like the way of like, if you do something long enough in a different environment, you kind of see everything
for sure.
And like you have these experiences that like normal people, unless they do that same kind of stuff, aren't going to have. So like, we definitely have some of those.
For sure. Yeah. I would say, and like I had like some crazy things happen to me. We'll talk about like what happened like together. Yeah. But like one of the weirdest things that happened to me was, since I fished those ponds so much, I caught some weird stuff. I've caught a bike. I've caught multiple bikes, actually. I've caught porn. I found a whole bunch of porn in the woods. I don't know if I ever told you that, actually. I found a whole bunch of like dirty videos and stuff in the woods one time when I was going back. And then I also...
Did you keep it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm definitely sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Not like under the bed?
No, it's not under the bed. Yeah, no, it's not in like the carved out, part of a tree back in the woods that I run and, travel back.
Was there like a hole next to the tree?
Yeah, there was, yeah.
In the tree?
Yeah, it looked like a lady. Yeah. Who's that lady? Sexy lady.
Made of wood, real sturdy.
Yeah, made of wood, real sturdy. No, and then I found wallets and stuff, but one of the crazier things that I remember we found, and you went back there for this. Remember the pond that was in Aaron's grandparents' neighborhood, like the bigger one as you were driving in?
Yeah.
Okay. So remember like the wooded area back there?
That was a big wooded area.
It was a big
because
area.
that connected to that patch of woods where we found that like super old deer stand.
Well, that's what I was gonna say was the deer stand. Remember that we found that thing, and it was clearly being used. Because remember we finally messed with it and it got took down. Yeah. So somebody in the neighborhood was using it.
Well, there's no doubt. There's guys like I know guys that hunt back in Brick Creek Preserve.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, a lot goes on in the woods. Mm-hmm. It's such a populated, like Pinellas has like 1 million, 2 million, almost 2 million people, right?
It's a lot.
It's a lot of people. And you put an 18,000 acre, that's how big Bricker Creek is, nature preserve out there. Like there's freaking deer everywhere up there. There's a ton of deer up there. People hit deer all the time. They're always dead on the side of the road and you're not allowed to hunt any of it. So when you tell people they can't, but you put like some of the rednecks up there and that's, again, it's close to Pasco. So you're right on that line where there's a lot more people that are country folk, if you want to call them that. And there's definitely people that are back there
for sure
doing so. Okay, so staying on the topic of the preserve, so same neighborhood where Aaron's grandparents lived and the Hassels used to live. A group of us, again I say us, I was loosely in that group, but I was not like like hugely involved in this particular thing. However, I did go back there, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times.
Yeah, you were there pretty often.
So got all this wood, plywood. Basically, it was like all particle board.
Yeah.
And we carried it from this kid's grandparents' house, okay? And their house backed up to the preserve.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you went to the end of the cul-de-sac, there was the fence of the preserve like line, and then there was power lines that went back. So again, little pond, fence, hole in the fence. Carried all this wood back there, walked the power lines a mile.
At least, yeah.
I mean, like forever.
Yeah.
Like just kept going and kept going. Did all this at night, by the way. Never did this during the day.
No.
Because of the fact that there's almost 2 million people that live here. So people are going to find out if there's a bunch of sketchy kids carrying wood back to the nature preserve. So this goes on for what? Basically like an entire summer. The entire goal of carrying this wood back into the preserve was to build a fort.
Yeah.
That we were going to camp at, theoretically, in the winter.
Yeah.
And do cool things.
Yeah.
Let's also make something clear. We were not bad kids. Our friends didn't really drink. Our friends didn't really smoke.
Yeah.
Like, we did our fair share of tobacco products. But
Yeah.
as far as everything else and, like, doing sketchy things along those lines, not really. We were more for, like, the adventure and the getting caught or like the kind of the harmless things that you do as a kid.
Yeah.
So we'd carry this stuff like a mile back on that trail under the power lines and then go back, like just cut into the woods at like a random tree. It wasn't random. We obviously knew where we were theoretically. And then went back how far into the woods from there?
I would say that the palmettos we cut were probably 200 yards.
Yeah, a couple hundred yards maybe off the main trail.
Yeah.
So the main trail, the power line trail, I mean, started at a horse farm. And there's those like few horse farms that are back in Woodfield too, or that border like Appaloosa and those areas up off of Keystone. So the horseback riders would ride that trail because they could. You could do that in the preserve, at least in that spot of the preserve, or they just did it and nobody cared. So all of a sudden we like start cutting down trees and like got a burn barrel out there and like we're having fires and like it's legit, like all in the middle of the night. And where was our parents? Nobody knew. And one night I was out there the first time it got sketchy. Then I was not out there the night that you guys all got caught.
Yeah.
So we had carried this stuff back in, made like this pretty good size like camp spot area, and had like a fire going. We're like starting construction. If you want to,
we brought like hammers and everything back.
Oh yeah, man. We had a ton of wood, like a ton of supplies. We had made trip after trip after trip, and like each one of these trips is like 2 hours.
Yeah.
So this was a lot of weekends. This was like an entire summer just to build this thing. So we saw, as we were like walking back, there's like a big group of us. I don't know, there's what, 5 or 6 of us probably.
Yeah.
Saw like somebody walking down that trail dressed really dark. Like you could tell that, and again, it's like sugar sand, so it's kind of gray. And with the moonlight, you can still kind of see enough. Saw a person cut into the woods. Meaning we cut into the woods. Somebody yelled. We ended up making it back. And then the next time you guys went out there, this is when you need to pick up the story because this is where it gets freaking crazy.
Yeah. So essentially what happens is, and of course this story comes up because this is our life. And again, we didn't have any ill will. We just wanted to have fun in the woods.
Yeah, that's important, I think, to
we
understand.
We literally, did we have dreams of hunting? Yeah, because we didn't realize that it was illegal. I mean, we really didn't, we knew what we didn't know.
We knew we weren't supposed to be back there.
Yes, but we knew that we weren't going to get caught. And we were pretty dang good at not getting caught.
Well, in our teenage, perfect, we know everything minds, we knew we weren't going to get caught, right?
So this is a week or two before Christmas. Like you said, we were doing all this like leading up to the winter, and we were getting ready to have this place ready. So 2 people that we did this with was Andrew and Joey. They went I think it was Saturday or Sunday to go drop some stuff off in the woods. And
Andrew who?
No, Aaron and Joey. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't mean to say Andrew. It was Aaron and Joey. So they went to go drop stuff off in the woods, and I couldn't make it there. They were like, "Hey, we'll meet you up later. You know, we're gonna drop this stuff off, and we'll meet you tonight at this event we were going to."
Yeah.
And they dropped this stuff off. They're going to do some things, and they again run into a gentleman kind of in like, I guess you could say farm attire or something like that. And they just run. They bolt.
Oh.
Get back to the house. They drive off and don't think anything of it. You know, we meet up. We were actually going to the I think it was the underground church party, which was our church at the time. For everybody that doesn't know, we went to a certain church, and that was like the name of like the
high school part of the youth.
So we were going to church. We were meeting up at church. So we were good kids, and I would say we still are good for the most part. So I meet up with them, and essentially their parents meet us at the front and say, hey, we have to meet with the police tomorrow. So that gentleman who looked like he was in farm attire was the police officer that essentially like watched the area and made sure that meth heads weren't making meth in the back of the woods, because that's what they were doing while we were making this fort. There was meth labs back there.
Yeah, there was already like an investigation into.
And I think I found some because I remember finding a whole bunch of like cooking supplies
and you remember every once in a while we would find lots of 5-gallon buckets, lots of like half cut or like 55-gallon drums, and just like stuff that looked like trash.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I know they had said that back in like the 80s and 90s, back when like trail cameras weren't a thing and nobody was really spending any time back there because nobody like cared about what happened in the woods back there. So like when you have an area that's basically like anarchy, like crazy people do crazy things back there. So they were making meth, they were making liquor, they were making like, you name it, it was happening back there. I'm sure people have gone back there to like kill people before and stuff like that too. So, but also at the same time that you guys get caught, luckily, I was not named in this group, which is great. I'm forever indebted to you guys.
No problem. So the reason why he chased after Aaron and Joey was because he thought that they were making meth back there.
Right.
So what do they do typically when they think, they're trying to find some meth dealers or something like that? They call the helicopters, they call dogs, they call like 10 or 12 police officers to chase them down. So they are trying to locate our camp.
And and this is like still, this is at night. So like this guy doesn't get like a good look. He just sees that there's two people.
Yeah.
And
this was during the day though, that like the second time it happened. Yeah. So, or like later in the evening.
But still, he didn't get like a great enough look to be like, it's just a couple of kids. But like, even at that point, like
it doesn't matter.
We were 17, 18 years old. Yeah. So it was like, well, we were kids, but we weren't kids at the same time.
We could have gotten in trouble.
For sure. You did.
Yeah, we definitely did. So Aaron and Joey drove off. They're fine. So this officer calls in pretty much everything. He calls in helicopters. He calls in all this stuff.
Dogs too, right?
The dogs, yes. So I'm very proud about this. They could not find our camp with the helicopters. The only way they found it was with the dogs because they picked up their scent. They said that we camoed it really, really well. Yeah, and the way that, how to get back there, you could not see it at all from like the main like strip.
No.
So this happens. You're probably wondering how we got caught. So,
how did they know that it was Aaron and Joey? Like, because again, there's a difference between seeing two people and then basically a couple hours later being like, we know who you are. Yes. Like, how did they? This is freaking hilarious.
So this is probably one of the dumber things that has ever happened to us. So they finally locate the camp and they're looking around trying to find. Clearly they're probably seeing like this isn't a meth lab, but neither here nor there. Yeah. We had our burn pit, and Aaron had the great idea to bring his homework, some leftover homework, to use to start the fire. Well, what does homework have?
Well, if you went to a high school in Pinellas County, you headed your paper the same way, which was with your name, the date, where you go to school, whatever the class was and what period it was, basically. But it had his name on it.
So it had his name on it. So what did they do? They typed his name into their database and found his address. And
would you look at that? There's a blank that lives within like 2 miles of where we're standing right now.
So they go to his house. And he, and he rats me and Joey out. So
yeah, of course he did.
So I show up to church and I have to meet with the police officers the next day. We met at Aaron's house and they kind of like sternly, bruh. But they did say that they were very impressed with what we did. So I was pretty proud of that.
But like, what was the repercussions for you guys?
The repercussions is I was banned for life from the Brook Creek Preserve. Yeah. I could not step foot in it. If I even like the public area.
And that's still
I don't know. Supposedly they lifted it. I went recently and I didn't get caught.
Went where?
To the Berkeley Preserve.
What part?
I went on a bike ride. I went on like the public area. It was really nice. Yeah.
What? I mean, yeah, you don't have wanted posters up out there.
No, they did have me like in a file though. Like it said like this is one person
with Chinese facial recognition cameras.
Yeah, that could not go in here. But yeah, I'm banned for life. And the biggest, I would say, the biggest charge we got was that we had to go with the police officers and tear down our fort.
Didn't you guys get 2 tickets though too?
Oh, we got a few tickets. Yeah.
You got. One for trespassing.
One for trespassing.
One for vandalism.
One
right?
for vandalism.
And the vandalism was because
we cut down so many trees.
Yeah,
so many trees. They said that they could have charged us with a lot.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's protected land. So I mean, it's.
Yeah. But they didn't. They were very nice. I paid the citations. It was like a couple $100 or whatever. And we had to tear down our fort, and it was pretty sad because it was a lot of work. I mean, we put a lot of work into that place for sure. And it took us a lot of time to do it. But it was something that we'll never forget. So you didn't have to take it down. Because you didn't get ratted out on. So
I would have died. Like my parents would have killed me.
They would have killed you for sure.
Like some of our friends did not have parents that cared as much as ours did about that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think my parents had a healthy understanding of like, we have 3 boys. They're going to do things that boys do. They're going to be boys. They're going to get into trouble. But like, I remember my dad told me one time, like, I think I got a trespassing, like a written warning or something. Like, I don't ever think I got a ticket for trespassing. We got kicked out of plenty of places, but most of the time, like it was just, get out of here, and they would pull off type of thing. I think I got 1 written trespassing, and it wasn't in Woodfield. It was when I was able to drive, and I was like freaking out, like I was gonna get in trouble. And my dad's like, you know what? It's like if all you get in trouble for is trespassing because you're in a fishing spot, like then we kind of have nothing to worry about. Yeah. So I know that made me feel a lot better. But let's talk. Okay, switching gears because we're getting ready to get into conspiracies. But before we get into conspiracies, but this is kind of a leeway. We hung out a lot when the Horns lived over by Tarbin Woods Golf Course. We hung out a lot on that golf course.
Yes, we did.
And we saw, I would call them unexplainable things out on that golf course. Not just things in the sky, but like people.
Yes.
So now that I'm older, I feel like I have more of a grasp on reality than I did at, 15, 16, 17. But were there people doing the same kind of stuff we were doing out there? Like, let me get this out of the way. Like, we weren't doing anything bad per se. Like, we were smoking cigars and
running around on
the golf course. Like, we were not doing drugs. We were not out there drinking. We were not vandalizing things. Like, we would run it.
Well, we weren't. Yeah. There were other people that possibly did things at other times, but that's neither here nor there. So
but we would like run in the range and like take the balls and
like throw them,
like as far as we could towards the building, and like that was it. So like stuff that kids do theoretically, but Briefcase Men or like some of the UFO stuff first?
I mean, I feel like the UFOs would be.
We definitely saw some crazy things in the sky.
We definitely saw some crazy things. So do you want to talk about the UFOs? And then I'll talk about Briefcase Man.
I think the UFOs are kind of like self-explanatory. Like we just saw some things in the sky that we could not explain. Everybody can pick out a plane. Yeah. Everybody can pick out a shooting star. I don't remember ever seeing a shooting star then. Like I've seen 3 in my life, and it's all been like since I've lived in Safety Harbor, so like the last 3 years or 4 years. So like I would not chalk any of them up to something that I'm like, no, I definitely don't see any of what we saw out there, the movements, the lights. We saw like a bunch of them that had like green lights that were like stretched across. I remember we were standing like by the range, and if you looked straight out at the range, you were basically looking, I'm trying to think of the direction. You'd be looking north. So you could see the stars, and a lot of times like it was so dark out there that like there was no lights on. And especially at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, no lights are on in houses. There's no like spotlights on. There's no lights up on at the clubhouse. So like you could see the sky really well up there, especially if you're looking north, which is towards like the preserve, over the preserve. So again, there's no light pollution coming from north either. So we saw like crazy green lights doing all this weird stuff, but it was such a big spread that it wasn't like that looks like it's one like object. No, it was
Yeah.
like, if it was one object, it was huge,
Yeah.
but it was all moving in unison. It was
Yeah.
freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And then there was
Briefcase Man.
the scary. Go.
Yeah.
Just go.
So Briefcase Man was a thing that the way I found out about it was one of the guys that we hung out with and his like older buddies would go out there and they just kind of like they'd be out there all night and just like running around and doing crazy stuff. And they would start to say that they were seeing something out there. And they said that it was like a tall person on blacker than you could see, like
like dressed
night.
so dark
Yeah.
they stood out of the
That
darkness,
stood out of the
and it was
darkness.
dark out there.
Yeah, it was very, very dark. And he would carry a briefcase, and I'm like, okay, that's a load of crap.
But like a black like trench coat,
yeah, like
suit,
a trench
whatever,
coat, like whatever it was.
hat.
Yeah. And they said that you would just see him. He would just appear, and I'm like, there's no way. Like that is not true.
Did you see him?
I did see him.
Me too.
Yeah. So one night it was me, Aaron, and Bobby, and we were just walking around on the golf course, just doing whatever we were, just doing stupid stuff. I actually remember we were messing with a raccoon in a trash can, and he was like standing in the
Yeah, it was like a Mexican standoff.
Yeah, Mexican standoff, and like, oh, look at a raccoon. So they're doing that. I'm like chucking stuff into the woods, and then I turn around and I look at them, and right behind them is Briefcase Man, just standing there. And like I literally I ran. Like I saw him and just booked it as fast as I could. And they're like, what the heck are you doing? I'm like, he was right behind you. Like, personally, I don't think that I could not see, like, make that up or like create that in my mind. Yeah. Like, it was a person standing directly behind them, and I could see it in the darkest of night, and it was freaking crazy.
So mine, I have slightly more context, but definitely not like, I don't think he knew whatever it is or who it was. And again, it could have just been somebody completely different, but I like to think it was Briefcase Man.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10, at Tarpon Woods Golf Course. So number 1 starts out there to the left of like the pro shop, and then number 10 is over by like the range. It borders the range. There's a cart path that goes around number 10, and then there's like a cut through in the woods that goes over to like 17 or 18, whatever the hole that is. So out there, walking number 10, and through that gap that goes over to another hole. So this is maybe 200 yards away. So it's up against this row of houses. It's another cart path. I could just see somebody walking carrying a briefcase. I could clearly see that they were carrying something. Mm-hmm. They were clearly wearing ridiculously dark clothes. I could not pick them out. They were not walking in like a I'm trying to get away fashion or like trying to sneak around. They were just like a normal person, like however you would hold a briefcase, and they were wearing it like not like a top hat per se, but like one of those like old hats from like,
like
the gangster
a
20s. Yeah, like from like for the 20s, like a gangster hat. Yeah. And couldn't see like eyes or anything, never like stopped and like turned and looked, just was walking. And I just remember it being like, that's really weird. That's got to be the Briefcase Man. And they're walking way too fast. Like I was definitely scared, but it wasn't like this. He snuck up or he knew I was there and was like pursuing, or like this could have just been like a crazy guy that was doing the exact same thing that we were doing. Yeah. Or just somebody with insomnia that's out or sleepwalking or whatever, just like doing weird stuff out there in the woods like we were. But
we'll never know.
But we will never know. But I think the Briefcase Man was like, that was like the legend that probably like kept me up at night.
For sure.
I would say the Briefcase Man was nuts.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to get weird now? We're already there. So
we've gotten a little weird already, but like let's get really weird. Let's get like secret societies weird.
So we were in the woods sometimes. Yeah. There's some other things that happen in the woods too.
Like what happens in the woods?
Let's take the stroll down what I like to call the Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
Do you know about the Bohemian Grove?
Yeah, I know about the Bohemian Grove.
So for those of you who do not know the Bohemian Grove, this is guess you could say, secret society. Created.
It's a men's club.
Men's club only. Created in 1878. That is out in San Francisco.
San Francisco area. It's Sonoma County, so country for all you Beckies.
It's a very large piece of land.
2,700 acres.
2,700 acres, yep.
Redwoods, in like a redwood forest.
Yes. That has this cult, you could say, of very important gentlemen that meet there every year to do...
Twice a year.
Yes.
I mean,
twice a
they
year.
have two meetings
Yes.
twice a year.
Yes, but they meet every year.
I think you can go out there whenever you want.
Yes, you can, but they do some very strange things there that I would say has to do with the one world government takeover type thing, because they do some very, very, very weird things there.
So I was reading that basically it's kind of this gentleman's club per se of these rich and powerful men, politicians, business owners, media people,
presidents.
Oh yeah, definitely presidents.
Lots of presidents.
Yeah, there's Taft, Teddy Roosevelt,
Hoover, Nixon, Reagan. Yep. I mean, like a lot of and I think the Bushes.
Are the Bushes?
I think so. Yeah, they're doing some weird stuff there. Yeah,
that's the next one.
Yeah,
but so like on the surface level, it seems like it's just this super high profile joke in a way to me.
And you're not allowed to bring phones. You're not allowed to have any access to the outside world.
Right.
And almost on the outside looking in, you would say, oh, it's just a way for these guys to decompress. And get away.
Well, because like one of their rules is you're not allowed to talk.
Yes.
About business.
So the saying, and I'm probably going to misquote this, but the saying on the outside of it is webbing spiders lay unto here. And that's kind of like I'm butchering it a little bit, but essentially it's saying like
weaving spiders.
Yes. It's essentially saying like we're not allowed to talk about business or anything that
I'm just looking something.
Yeah. That wraps us up.
Talking.
And they do some very strange things there. Like I was saying, one of them, and I can kind of segue into this, is you probably read this as well, is the cremation of care.
The cremation of care. That I was just looking for the name of it because this is the one that supposedly the one and only Alex Jones snuck into in 2000.
He did. He snuck into it.
Well, no, he snuck into it because he got like escorted out. But like people try to sneak in all the time. But this is the one that he was talking about like. This is where they're doing their child sacrifices. This is where the really, really, really weird stuff.
But this is true though.
Comes in.
This is real. Like that they do this stuff.
It's real.
Yes.
Okay, but again, kind of like the last one. I think there's truth to some of it, which is they do have this giant concrete owl effigy statue,
the owl god,
that's supposedly Moloch or Molech or whatever his name is, and in Old Testament days, right, meaning Old Testament of the Bible, certain whoever worshipped Molech, who was again a pagan god, they sacrificed their children to him.
Yes.
Now, that being said,
but what do they do? They don't. They say the conspiracy is they actually still sacrifice people, but they what they do in front of Moloch is they burn essentially like sticks.
Yeah, but it's like
a human
being. They weave these like
sticks.
flexible wood or whatever it is, and they weave it into this like object that looks like a coffin or like a body or something like that.
And they do it to
they burn it,
get wisdom and get rid of all their worries.
It's like their opening ceremony when they start the 2 weeks. So they do this trip in July, and it's a 2 week trip, and that's how they like kick it off with the cremation of cares. And it's like they kick off to say like, okay, now you're here. Like, it's time to let go of everything and just relax.
Yeah.
So they do the weird things. Yeah, you can do like I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the child sacrifice stuff, the weird satanic rituals where they all like chant weird things. But like, if you can like there's a lot of like Latin written into like what the priests read off, or not the priest, but like whoever's doing the ceremony. But like the guy that started the Bohemian Grove,
Walter Cronkite's the voice of the owl, if you knew that. So
is he?
Yeah, Walter Cronkite. Yeah, they like recorded his voice.
Didn't he just die?
No, he's been.
Who's that just? Who's the dude that just died like yesterday?
Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, freaking meat puller.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so if you want to get so. When it comes to these secret societies of all these powerful men, so we'll get into this. We're going to get into Skull and Bones as well. There's two roads. Okay, so I fall on this road. I would say maybe you fall closer to this other road. This road would be more like this is just a really good way for rich and powerful men to make an excuse to do business and all basically make sure their beliefs for what they want to accomplish are lined up. Because I do believe that there's a better chance of there being more of like a one world government, if you want to say it. Okay. I believe there are certain interests that are driving everything, right? BlackRock, we can talk about that again in another episode. I think that can take up literally like a whole thing. But again, it's like not from the aspect of they're draining blood out of kids to drink for sacrifices.
Possibly.
But okay, that's the other road though. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't go down that road. I would go more along the road of like, they want more power, they want more money, and they have these agents or these actors placed in certain areas. So just take the Bushes, for example. Okay. So they're in the Skull and Bone Society thing. Yes. Well, I don't think the Bushes are that smart. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, I think they're kind of idiots. However,
possibly,
I think they're smart enough to make sure they're around the right type of people. Okay. When you're around the right type of people, they've been a powerful family for years. When you're around the right type of people and you're willing to play ball for money, power, political seats, houses, whatever, it's easy to dangle a dollar over somebody and get them to do what you want them to do. It's how the world works, right? So it's just when the dollar amounts go up, generally so does the responsibility. So it's like, okay, there was that whole movie about 9/11 and basically Dick Cheney's relationship with George Bush. And it was basically this, hey, I'm not a second seat guy. This is Dick Cheney. I'm the leader of stuff. Like, I start companies, I run companies. But he's like, I'm perfectly fine doing it out of the spotlight as long as you let me make the decisions. You can be the guy that gets all the credit, but I want the money. There we go with the whole 9/11 stuff. Now, am I saying Bush started 9/11 and this and that? No, but Dick Cheney definitely profited huge off of that, which means that tells me that, again, there's a common interest, as I'm saying. And again, if it costs me something, they don't care. If it costs you something, they don't care. As long as they gain from it, that's the way the world works, in my opinion. So again, I do think there's this one lane system of this 1% of the 1% of the 1% that are making all the decisions that benefit them. I don't know if they're doing it to for the purpose of harm and destruction. I think it's more for the purposes of, how do I get more? How do I get more? How do I get more power? How do I get more money? How do I get more control? I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. So again, I say all that to say, Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, it's just this meeting place for those people. To align and make sure everything goes, to make sure they're all on the same page. So it's one place, they can all come, they can meet, they can talk, and then they can leave and do what they talked about.
Take over the world.
Exactly. Well, yes.
Yeah. No,
but
I
not
agree
like
with that.
this kind of a way, but in a this kind of
I think it's both. I think it's this and this, because you have to do this to get this. I mean, you have to have
reminds me of Dexter's Laboratory. You remember that?
Dexter's Laboratory. Yeah. No, I think that they're meeting at these places to get a game plan to make more money and take over the world. I mean, look at what happened at Bohemian Grove in 42.
Manhattan Project meetings.
The Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer. Again, that's a thought that the entire Manhattan Project was basically not planned there, but fully agreed to, where they actually made the deal, where it was hey, here's what we've been working on. Let's take this 2 weeks to negotiate and figure out how we're going to do this, and then bingo, we got an atomic bomb.
Another interesting fact about that,
it's all being funded by the United States government.
It is. The group of people that met, not including Oppenheimer, the Woppenheimer, was S1. So S1 is the same group of people that are operating around and out of Area 51.
Wait, what? The S1?
S1. Yeah, so S1 is the original intelligence agency.
Okay.
With Roswell and Bob Lazar and all that stuff.
So you're talking the CIA is considered black. This is the black.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the stuff that's not on the books.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
So this is how.
I have the documents.
You know how we fund S1? Again, I have the documents. I have 7 terabytes.
7 terabytes. Yeah.
I figured out I say that. I heard this.
We figured it out. Yeah.
How they fund this, and it completely makes sense because all you got to do is think about in a business perspective, how would I get something accomplished? Okay. And if I wanted to accomplish it sketchily without somebody else finding out, how would I do it? Well, again, all it takes is a basic level of understanding of how that business operates, really. Again, if you're in a position like me and you are, we can kind of figure that out. Take a plane. Let's take an F-18, okay, fighter jet. I don't know what it costs to build one of those things. Let's look it up. But let's just say it costs $50 million. That's what whatever the contracting company is that sells it to the United States. They get a check for $50 million per plane. Let's just say. But how much? $13.7 million. Well, what I've heard.
1976, $72 million today's money.
$72 million. Okay, so let's just round it up, and let's just say you throw in a couple extra little goodies, some heated seats.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Power windows, not crank. Little sunroof action. You throw in a couple of little creature comforts. Let's just say it's $100 million. Okay, so that company charges the United States $100 million. They pay $100 million for it. Yeah, okay, I had it backwards. I'm sorry. The United States pays $100 million for that plane.
Yes.
However, that plane really only costs us $50 million.
Yeah.
What do we do with the other 50?
Yeah.
That's called embezzling.
Yes.
We just take that money and we move it to a black account because technically they spent it.
Yes.
But technically it no longer exists.
Yes.
Which goes along with these companies, S1 and all these other projects that are going on. Again, the United States is the world's police. We are doing all of these operations. We are causing and stopping wars. We are taking people out that we don't like. We are doing all of that stuff.
Yeah.
The difference is since there's no paper trail to prove all of this stuff. So again, all of this money that supposedly gets spent on this one airplane, but in reality, it's just going to, I don't know. Let's just say start terrorist riots outside of a United States embassy in Libya. Let's just use that one as an example. So I mean, we kind of funded that. So. So let's just say that a lot of that money is technically untraceable. So then whoever's in office can stand up and be like, "What didn't know that was going on?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Pentagon has failed their audit 6 years in a row.
Well, and again, what speech was given on September 10th, 2001 by Donald Rumsfeld, the former Secretary, was he the Secretary of Defense?
Yeah.
Secretary of State. Secretary of State. Well, the Pentagon, we're missing a couple of trillion, not billion, trillion. By the way, this was 23 years ago, almost 22 years ago, almost to be 23 next year, 22 years ago. $3 trillion today. Google that one too. How much is $3 trillion worth today? I'm going to go out on a limb and say
a lot.
Three times. I'm going to say that's $9 trillion from 2001 till now. So $3 trillion or $2 trillion or whatever it was somehow just disappears when they do this audit. And again, the IRS audits. It's like it'd be like me auditor. $3 trillion. Let's just use $3 trillion as the number. It might be 2, but neither here nor there. It's the metric works the same. It would be like letting the business owner audit himself, right? So when you have the government auditing the government,
nothing's ever.
What are we doing here? Yeah. So again, that to me, that's not even a conspiracy.
Yeah, that's fact.
That's just a flat out rigged outcome of there. If you have to live to a standard that you set, it doesn't matter if you live to that standard or not because you create your own consequences. So if you're the author of the consequences and of the 5.2 trillion. Okay, so almost double, let's say. So there you go. So imagine somebody going on right now. Imagine that bumbling buffoon who doesn't even know who he is or where he is. But let's just take Secretary of State. Let's take Blinken. Put Blinken on TV right now and say, "Hey, guys, we're really sorry about this, but we lost $5 trillion. We don't know where it went.
Yeah, we don't know
where it went. By the way, nobody ever found out where it went. And then 2 planes crashed into the...
Because the actual department where they were going to go to find it, that was the one that got blown up. Yeah.
Where was the plane parts in that picture, by the way?
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Did you see that picture of the Pentagon?
Oh, yeah,
when it got
for sure.
Hit by a plane?
Yeah, dank memes don't melt steel beams. Let's just say that. So...
That's another 9/11's another crazy conspiracy that we could get into
For sure. Yeah.
But now, like, I won't sit here and say like the United States flew planes into its own buildings and killed its own civilians. But I won't sit here and not say that either. But I also won't sit here and say that it was 100% caused completely out of our ability to. I think we knew it was going to happen in essence, and I don't think we necessarily did.
About that with Pearl Harbor too, though.
And and again, how far back does it go? So
we don't know.
I think at the end of the day, politicians, powerful people, self-interest comes far before being a public servant.
Yes.
A true public servant is willing to sacrifice themselves for their people.
Yeah.
We don't have any of those left, hardly any of them.
No.
Maybe there's one or two good ones up there, but I don't think any of them really are. And again, if you got to sacrifice them along with the crap then they got to go too. I mean, it's.
And I also think that we've come to the conclusion that Bohemian Grove is, in fact, a secret world organization meeting to take over the world.
What about Skull and Bones?
Skull and Bones is the same thing. What do they do in Skull and Bones?
So I have there's a couple crazy things that they do.
Yeah.
I also have a crazy thought on why it's located where and why a certain pizza man is obsessed with this certain place. However, no, I'll get into that in just a second. Skull and Bones, older than the Bohemian Grove. Like, they're estimating that it started, like, its official date was like 1740 something. Started by monks at Yale, priests, I'm sorry, at Yale. So it all started out of Yale, prestigious Ivy League school, right? So actually, their entry is kind of cool. So for a long time, it was only men, like up until the 90s or something, or the 80s. They started including all of these people in on all of this stuff. The way that they choose them, this is just really cool to me. So you have to be an undergrad. Okay. So meaning you have to have graduated and you have to be going towards a second degree at Yale.
Okay.
You had to have started at Yale. All they do, they have this undergrad party. Any member walks up behind you, gives you 2 taps on the shoulder. That's your entry. That's when you know you're in. There's nothing official. They don't come to you. They don't like elect you in this meeting and vote. Any member can walk up to anybody that they want that meets those couple criteria of like undergrad, you have to go to Yale, stuff like that. And they just tap you twice on the shoulder and you're in. That's your membership.
Interesting.
Isn't that kind of cool?
That is kind of cool.
I mean, it's kind of BA.
Yeah. What about the other thing?
Now once you get in,
this is where it's not so cool.
This is where it starts to turn real weird. A lot of like father-son duos in this, by the way.
Yes.
So the one thing about Skull and Bones is that they can bring guests and some things like that in. So again, dads are encouraged to bring their sons. Yeah. Supposedly, it's kind of like Scientology. Yeah. They like blackmail you into staying in. Yeah. So supposedly, once you get chosen to be in, you still have to prove yourself. It's kind of like a gang. You got to go, you got to go get your hands dirty.
Weird. You definitely get your hands dirty.
Definitely got to get your hands dirty. Yeah. We'll just say that. Yeah. They basically blackmail you in. Why you would ever choose to do that? Again, I don't know. Maybe they promise you all this money and power. Now, one thing I also did here that kind of goes along with the money thing is part of the criteria once you're in for life. They promise you that you will never have to worry about funds in your life ever again. So you will never be in any kind of money trouble.
Is that worth the yank?
Apparently it's worth that to some people. Yeah. Now, at the same time, though, all of the people that are in it are rich. So it's like, well...
but now they're just richer.
Yeah, but they have more power and then they get put in... And again, it's just, to me, it's just a gateway into like these positions of power and then aligning of people's doctrine and what they want done, and then they accomplish it together because there is no I in team. So the secret society thing is kind of crazy, but okay. So to my point, where it's located, and then who I think has secret ties to it that he won't admit. Yeah, it's in New Haven, Connecticut. That's where the Tomb, which is their clubhouse per se, the Moose Lodge. Okay, that's where their Moose Lodge is. So it's called the Tomb. Inside, supposedly, it's just like they have a ton of like skeletons, bones. They supposedly have Geronimo. You know, Geronimo is the Indian. Geronimo's skull. They were sued by what was Geronimo? What tribe was he from?
I don't know.
Hey Siri, what tribe was Geronimo from?
Maybe Cherokee.
Freaking Chinese phone. Hey Siri, what tribe was
We
Geronimo
have
from?
technology.
His tribe, Apache.
Okay.
Apache. There we
So
go.
Geronimo was an Apache. They supposedly, okay, so the Apache sued, or his family or something, like his lineage sued the Skull and Bones Society to try and get this back. Obviously, they lost.
Yeah.
So they supposedly have all this weird stuff inside. Where it's located, to me, is the most interesting part. It's New Haven, Connecticut.
Yes.
According to Dave Portnoy,
Yes. Yeah.
who recently just became ridiculously rich.
That is true.
That's the pizza capital of the world.
That is true.
Not America, the
Yeah.
world.
That is true.
Is Dave Portnoy in the Skull and Bones Society?
I think so. I think that's how he got his money. Was he went to New Haven and realized that they have the best pizza ever. Possibly it is because the skull of Geronimo's there. It is putting a crazy mystical curse on the
You
pizza,
lost me there.
making it really good. No, hear me out.
Okay.
So because of that, the pizza's delicious. And also, too, he realized that the Skull and Bones was there and like, hey, maybe I can make some extra money on this. I'll join. And now he's loaded.
So if you remember, he started it in like 2000, 2003. 4 or 5 years ago, it starts to become successful and it becomes a meme machine on Instagram, social media, all that stuff. He sells it to basically the same company that owns ESPN for like $100 million. They take it public. It starts to tank for whatever reason. Again, don't remember the whole ins and outs of the deal. He buys it back for $1, $1.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, there's a lot more to the story than he bought it, his whole business back for $1. There's royalties and there's things that are going to be paid to this other parent company. But it's fully Dave Portnoy's again, and he took it back private. Okay, so now it's not a publicly traded company. He's responsible / owns the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
So his net worth went from like 0 to like 100 to like 400 million.
Mm-hmm.
Plus whatever else he does. He's got other investments. I know he's got a bunch of houses. He's got houses in anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
The New Haven thing. Now again, that was 6 months ago when he bought this, when he bought the business back from such and such people. He said the New Haven thing way before that.
Yeah.
Frank Pepe's and Sally's and all that. Those pizza joints there. Skull and Bones has been in New Haven since like 1700s, which Yale is in Connecticut apparently, New Haven area. I don't know. I think it's all tied together.
I think it's all tied together, yeah, for sure. Bass fishing, Bohemian Grove.
Like it's almost like they flashed him a Polaroid
yeah,
with him,
yeah,
distributing free literature.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
And they were like, we back New Haven pizza. And maybe they're just like obsessed with pizza.
Yeah.
They're like, you need to go out and you need to score these places the highest and
Yeah.
people need to come here because you're the man of pizza. And he's like, you got me.
yeah. I think that's it.
Maybe
yeah.
he's owned.
Maybe
He says he's not,
maybe
but maybe he's owned.
maybe the Bohemian Grove. He's probably been there. Yeah,
I kind of want to go.
yeah. We should go.
I
Yeah.
like California.
maybe the bass fishing.
Like, I feel like California is like a dump of people
Mm-hmm.
and politics, but it's such a beautiful place.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
yeah.
such a beautiful
Yeah,
place.
no doubt. Yeah,
By the way, if you're from California or if you're from like New York, because people like are flocking to Florida,
Mhm.
you can come, but stop voting the way that you voted that turned your state into what it is while you're leaving it.
I would agree.
So again, don't vote like an idiot and learn how to freaking drive.
yeah, then we're good. Yeah.
And then you can stay.
Yeah.
We'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, on that note,
What else?
I think that's pretty much it. I feel pretty proud of what we talked about today. So I think we covered everything we needed to, and then some pizza, some secret societies,
Roast
and,
beef, a chicken, a pizza.
yep, and us growing up. So in our fishing adventures that we did. So I'm happy.
It fueled our love of conspiracy theories.
It did fuel our love of conspiracies for sure. So
Nice mustache, by the way.
thank you. Yeah, it's gonna probably
You
go.
gonna keep it past November?
No. I'm gonna
You guys are gonna have baby pictures. You're
Yeah,
married
I
to
need-
Becky too, so of course you guys are gonna have newborn pictures.
Yeah, I gotta look good. So
I'm gonna keep it.
yeah,
Yeah, it chose me, so
I think
gotta
that's a good
keep it.
idea.
yeah, I can't not choose it. I owe it that much.
Mm-hmm.
So plus it's starting to get thick.
Yeah, dumb
So-
thick. Yeah,
Yeah, it's getting dumb thick.
yeah. Well,
So the old going down to Key West. break this thing in.
Yeah. What do we call it?
I can't say it.
QS butt tickler. There we go. Yeah.
All right. Have a good baby.
Oh yeah, we will.
All right,
Yeah.
see ya.
Bye.